Okay, this is a long one, but it's worth it. So now all I'm doing is I made some 5-minute epoxy up, and I just put little blobs into the holes, and I put a little piece in, hopefully so it wouldn't spill over too much. It was a little smear, but it was okay. I'll put some dull coat essentially over it, and then that'll make it so it won't be shiny. Put a little bit of the epoxy in each hole, and then I smeared an eensy teensy weensy bit on the uh, piece of piano wire where they're going to insert, just to be sure, because when this thing goes on, it has to be strong and it has to stay put, because this is where the top wing is going to attach to, so it has to be right. So you can see I'm just putting little bits of the epoxy around there, and again, this stuff sets in about 5 minutes. This gives me a lot of time to play around, because I've test fit this 100 million times. And then, of course, when you have glue on it, now suddenly they won't go in the holes. Um, but I finally do get it into place. And that's kind of the point. If you use super glue or something, you'd mess up for sure. At least I would. This way, plenty of time to insert things, get them seated, get them at the right height. And then I spend a lot of time. I mean, the reason I kept this on the video is just to show you a lot of playing around, just making sure it's straight, looking at it end on, making sure that things are level. And I'm not doing anything here that I should do, which is measure. I'm only using my eyeballs. And it seemed to, it turned out. But again, I've tried so many times, I've tested fit it so many times. Um, Got to make sure that it is the way it's supposed to be. Um, Here I'm just kind of making sure that take a little excess of epoxy that was down there just to clean it up a little bit. But actually it turned out really well. It's very clean. And now I keep eyeballing this sucker. Again, I'm making sure that, oh yeah, that little piece came off. I have to fix that little piece of rigging. But I got to make sure that my everything is going to be level. I'm making sure that um, that's going to be level with the stabilizer, because all that has to look good when the wings are together, and they're all based on each other, and they're all based really on the top of that the fuselage there. That should be pretty dang flat. So as long as everything's parallel, I should be within earshot of everything. And then I'm making sure that the thrust line is dead horizontal. In this case, it wasn't canted in any ways. It wasn't a positive or negative slope on it. And, you know, there it is. Looks good. Looks neat with all the rigging on it. I think my wires and stuff are marginally too skinny, but I'd rather have them too skinny than too fat. So I think it looks kind of delicate, but I think it looks nice, especially with the rigging on there. So that's a win right there. So now move on to the tails. And these are all the tail parts. There's a piece for the where the ribs are going to go, and the spar. There are all the ribs laid out from one side to the other, because they're all different sizes. Notice, because they fit in between those, the top and the bottom. That's the top one, and I chose it as the top one, and I embossed to give myself some ribs that stick out a little bit on the top. I also embossed the fin and the rudder as well. These pieces are going to be part of the rudder, those pieces there. So it's cardboard and paper that goes on top of them. So this is long, but it might be instructive for some people. So I'm just putting glue along the cardboard spar, and because I short changed people lots when I have done the recent video, so I thought I may as well put one here that's most everything. So very carefully put that color piece down. That's going to the piece that's going to be at the hinge line for the elevator. And you just very carefully put it down. The parts fit absolutely perfectly. Again, it's the beauty of the laser cut cardboard that really does make a difference. It makes these very simple, actually. Not many mistakes are made, or the ones that are made are all mine. Making sure this is good. That's going to give you nice color, and have that edge look really, really nice. Now, that is the place where you put all the ribs. And these ribs are teeny weeny, and I've marked out where they go which was on the actual laser part. And all I do is put a little piece on and I run right down the line. Take a rib, make sure it's right side up. There's a thick side and a skinny side. Make sure it's right side up and make sure it's the right orientation. And put a little dab of tacky glue on there and plop it right where that spot is. Lay it down. Every once in a while, eyeball them so that they are perpendicular with the main spar or the hinge line spar. And all I do is keep doing this. So again, a little bit of glue. Make sure I got the orientation correct because there is a sidedness to these. There's a top and a bottom. They have an airfoil, well, not the tail end of an airfoil section to them, like a knife edge. But you can see this goes pretty quick, one after the other, right down the line. I'm just gluing them directly to that little line where it's supposed to go, and everything goes quite swimmingly. Every once in a while, like I said, lay it down, make sure things are straight and perpendicular. So to save you from going completely crazy, the rest of these are just put in at 8 times speed. But you get the idea. This works really well. It looks super, super fine and delicate, and you think there's no way this is going to do anything. Not only does it give it nice shape, it gives it correct scale thickness, but it's going to give it strength too. So don't just put the two pieces of paper or sandwich them together. The rudder is just sandwiched together, but not the elevator. So there you go. And then the tips are going to go on later. Looks good. And so there's the one that's the top, and that's going to just lay right on top like this. So what I'll do first, though, is lay these on the bottom side, because that makes more sense. If I glue them and then lay them right down with that leading edge there with a hinge line, right up against there, and you can see the end ribs kind of match to the edge. Add a little glue and very carefully set those down. You put glue on there and glue on all the rib pieces and work pretty quickly. The glue, we know, will dry fast, but you get it as good as you can. And I just started with one end and sort of made it be as clean as I could. And I started by sort of tacking down that hinge line. And then I started playing around with these little ribs and made sure they were relatively perpendicular and straight and all that. I mean, they are pretty dang nice. They follow right along where the ribs are supposed to be on the real airplane, on the real elevator. But you just got to make sure and you tap them down. And then one side, that's one of them was not quite, it was overlapping too much. And I actually pull the rib out and start again and put it on again. But it all worked fine. I'm just making sure they're all connected and they're all starting to touch. That one, I believe, is the one I pull off. Yeah, because that one it was just too far outside. So I might have it slightly on one side or the other, but it's okay. It's going to be fine. A lot of this isn't perfect. The real airplanes weren't perfect, so I'm not that worried. So there's the bottom on. All I got to do is put the top on. And that should fit right along there. And I'm just making sure. And notice the reds and the whites actually match up. So that's pretty amazing as far as I'm concerned. So add a little glue very quickly along the ribs and along the trailing edge and along that leading edge spar. And once that's all on there, just lay the top skin on. Goes over very evenly. As long as you just tack it down and just kind of fold it down carefully, it should line up absolutely perfectly, which this does. Again, this isn't me as much as it is the designers and whoever did the computer design on this sucker, because it does fit really nice. It's amazing. You've got an elevator there that's clean and straight and true, and I can't believe how the red and the whites line up on the elevator hinge. Works great. Just tweaking the trailing edge, sandwiching them, making sure that they're tight, because they should be very skinny. And I would challenge you to get a good plastic model with that thin of a trailing edge. So there are some out there, of course, but this is just really pretty fantastic. If you haven't done one of these, geez, you got to try it. Now the edges or the ends go on just like they did on the video I showed you when I did the elevator. Very similar. This is flatter, so I don't really have to worry about forming those into into a slight airfoil or a slight curve. So I just put them down up against the piece, make sure everything lines up, and then um, squeegee off a little excess glue, and there it is. As long as it's even, it looks fine. Turn it over, then you put the bottom side on. There is handedness, by the way, or sidedness too. So you make sure you put the one that's underneath and the one that's on the top. One is D and one is, I forget, G. I can't remember what they were labeled in Polish. But one's for top, one's for bottom. I just follow the directions and it's self-explanatory. Put that part on and tighten up. The nice thing about this glue, you can get it together and then you can smear it off and the seams almost disappear. The glue almost helps in some respect. It must have to do with, no, maybe the reflection of the light or whatever, but it makes a clean ending. So off camera, I did the other side, and there is the elevator. And dang, it looks good. And when it dries, it'll be strong. And now there's the rudder, and it is just folded over singly. There's nothing spectacular about it. But when I was embossing, see that middle piece right there, and on the other side, I embossed a little too rough and actually went through. It doesn't look too bad, but that's pretty stupid. That was my first major mistake on this thing, actually. So now, to make the rudder, there's a couple of pieces of cardboard that go on, again, the hinge line. This is the hinge line. And that little piece of cardboard, one end is flat, like a right angle, and one is a little tiny bullnose curve. And you just line up the curve and the straight edge to know which way it's supposed to go. Because the curve, see, there's the one that's curved on the end, and this other end is dead flat, it's perpendicular. That's going to go down towards the base, and the curved part's going to go up towards the top there. So I put a little glue down, and then simply put this thing up there with, again, the round part facing up towards the top tip of the rudder hinge line. Glue that in, fiddling around to make sure it's perpendicular, make sure it's straight, and make sure it's butted up to the end. And that just takes a little bit of time. You just make sure it's just the way you want it. And then there's another piece that goes on the base. And so I put that piece, put a little glue on that. I put the piece of paper that goes over it, which is a little gray piece of paper. And again, it has a round piece at one end and a flat piece on the other. And the base is slightly curved. So I curve it. This is an over curve, but that way at least it's kind of started. But when you look down at that bottom piece, you'll see, and when we put the fin on the elevator, you'll see it's curved a little, the mating surfaces, because of the airfoil of the stabilizer. So put that in with the flat piece towards the back there, and the round piece towards the leading edge of the part. And then once that's dry, we'll just put glue around the edge and we'll roll it over and sandwich it. This thing, again, fits so well that there was no undercutting or overcutting. A lot of times I've built these where you put wings or tails together and there's, white showing at the other end because it doesn't quite fit, or you're pulling and tugging and trying to make it just be perfect. This one, first time, first serve, bam, just roll it over, and it mated very, very well. So I can't say enough about this model. It's really a pretty one. It's nice because it's complicated, so it's nice that it's not a huge pain to put together. Anyway, there we are. And again, it looks like just a tiny little nothing, but it is a thickness, and it does give it shape, and it does give it form. So again, resist the temptation, I guess, to blow these little cardboard pieces off. Now I'm making sure it's all nice and squeezed together. And all of a sudden I realized the top actually should have something in there. And I realized I actually cut it out. And I forgot about it. So what I'm doing here is making sure the top is actually open. So I just kind of open the glue up a little bit because I had squeezed it shut. Because up there goes this tiny little piece. So I shove some glue in there. A little extra is okay because again the glue will help hide everything. And here's this tiny sliver of red, but it's necessary. And it's not cardboard; it's just paper. So I stuck the end up into the hinge line, and then I just pushed it down a little bit and used my finger to smooth it, get rid of excess glue. And you can see, even on this picture on the video, which isn't that good, it starts to disappear. And then I tapped that part in, that little piece, and you can see if you tap it a few times and you smooth it over with your finger, it basically disappears. And you've got a really nice top piece to that rudder. That's fantastic. The whole thing's done. All I got to do is, or fin, I'm sorry. All I got to do with the rudder now is put a control horn in there, which is going to go on later. We'll put it on later. I'll show you in the next video. But there you go. That's how it's going to look. And you can see that embossed piece looks really bad because it's cut, but I can't fix it. That'll be okay. I'll just pretend that didn't happen. And there's the elevator, and you can see the two little slots there are made for the control horns. And the control horns are right here. I pull out the plans here. It takes me a second to find them. But you can see how nice those look. They're delicate. The scalloped edge looks good. Everything matches. It's great. But these are the control horns. So those will be cut out and sandwiched, folded over, and be double thickness, dried and glued. And then they're going to go into these slots for the elevators there. And for the rudder, it's going to go right where that rip is, actually. So it's going to be fine. So last thing, just to finish it off so that it has a good place to stop, I go ahead and I decide, why not, I'll put the fin on. Because I wanted to see how it looked. It's cool having the extra. Every time you put a little extra piece on, it's fun. It makes you want to do more. So put a little glue on there. Again, I always put a little excess. Tack a little off. And you very carefully put it on. You can see there is a curve there. And dang, if that thing mates like you wouldn't believe. I mean, it's hard to believe how nice it is. And the excuse me, hinge line is vertical. It's great, right up against where the elevator is going to be. So it's really going to look nice. So I'm just making sure it is straight, making sure it's true, making sure it's not one direction or the other. And then I also make sure it's perpendicular by looking at it that way. I could use a triangle or a straight edge too, a right angle, but looks really good. And I love the white and the red. Looks cool. And there's where I'm going to put my rudder on. Oh, can't wait to get the rudder and the elevator on and get it all rigged back there. There's a couple struts that go back there on the top. And there's the elevator. Oh man, the thing's looking cool. Really can't wait to get those done. Maybe I can get them done tomorrow.